Hi friends and families, this is Miss Burns, and I'm going to walk you through our next math lesson for all of our first grade friends at Bethune. So today we are moving on from our review of place value, and now we're going to start applying everything we know about numbers that have a tens place and a ones place. We call those two-digit numbers. So here's what we're working on today. Our standard is 1 NBT4. And we're going to be able to use objects to add a one-digit number to a two-digit number whose sum is less than 100. So what that means is I'm going to be taking objects, things like base 10 blocks, leftover ones, and I'm going to be adding a one-digit number. Those are our numbers that only have a ones place, to two-digit numbers, our numbers that have a tens place and a ones place. And when we add them or put them together, what we get, the number we get, or the sum, is going to be less than 100. Now I know what you're thinking. Miss Burns, I don't have base 10 blocks. I don't have leftover ones. Well, I'm quickly going to show you a trick that you can do at home if you'd like to create some of these objects on your own. And if not, think of how you can be creative by using maybe lengths of pasta, pieces of spaghetti as your tens, and maybe pieces of macaroni or pennies as your ones. But if you have a blank sheet of paper, it can be any color, it can be ripped out of a notebook, it does not matter. You can use this to make some base 10 blocks and ones. So the first thing you're going to do is just cut that sheet of paper in half, no big deal. And then we're going to slice our paper in half again. So I've got two squares right now. I'm going to take each of these squares, I'm going to cut them into 5 strips, and I'm going to do that by making 4 cuts. So here's my first cut, there's one strip, my second cut, here's another strip, third cut, and fourth cut. I now have 5 strips. I also now have 5 base 10 blocks. I'm going to do the exact same thing with my other sheet of paper, 4 cuts to make 5 strips. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I've got 10 base 10 blocks. Now you're asking, well, but Miss Burns, what about your ones? Well, you've got this whole other sheet of paper, this half sheet of paper. You can go ahead and slice off a thin strip on the end. I'm going to cut it down the middle. These look like base 10 blocks. I'm going to now turn them into ones. And I'm going to give myself a whole pile of ones. Here we go. Now, they're not going to be perfectly in line the way that our ones and base 10 blocks would be. I won't be able to take 10 of these ones and fit them into one of my base 10 blocks I just made, but these are just representational. So as long as you know that the long strips are your 10s and the small squares are your ones, you're good. Now you can go ahead and use these as your objects. And if you want to be extra fancy, you can label them. I've got a bag here where I labeled them. You might want to label your 10s with a 10. You might want to label your ones with the number 1. And then go ahead and put them in a nice little bag for yourself. That way, every time you have to do math that involves place value, all of your materials are in a nice, safe place for you, just like that. So if you need to make yourself some manipulatives, go right ahead and do it. That's an easy way to do it. If you do not have these materials at home, feel free to get creative. We can use pencils, we can use strands of pasta, whatever is going to work for you so that you know the difference between your 10s and your ones. Okay, so let's get back to the math. Let's talk about how we're going to add two-digit and one-digit numbers. So when we're doing two-digit addition without regrouping, regrouping is when we make another 10. We're not quite there yet, friends, so don't worry about that. We know that when we add, we put numbers together, okay? So when we subtract, we're taking apart. But we're looking to add right now, we're putting 2 numbers together. The sum we're going to get is going to be bigger than what we started with. There are 2 different types of problems here. You might be adding a 2-digit number plus a 1-digit number. You might be adding a 2-digit number and another 2-digit number. For today, we are working on this side of our chart. We're only going to be adding 2-digit numbers and 1-digit numbers. Check out our example. we have 31 plus 5, and we want to know what that sum is. We want to know what we get when we add this 2-digit number, 31, and this 1-digit number, 5. Now, an easy way to do this is to use what we know about place value. We know that each of these numbers has a tens place and a ones place in my 2-digit number. 31 can be broken down into 3 tens and 1 1. 5 has like an invisible 0 here in this tens place, and it has 5 leftover ones. And I can use my objects, like my base 10 blocks, to actually show each of the tens and the ones in these numbers. Here's my 3 tens from my 31. Here's my 1 1 from 31. Here are my 5 ones from the number 5, and we know there are no tens. Then I'm just going to add together my ones, add together my tens, and I'm going to be able to figure out what this sum is. 1 1 plus 5 ones, well friends, we know 1 plus 5 is 6 and 5 plus 1 is 6. If you weren't sure, you could count them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 ones all together. And 3 tens plus 0 tens is 3 tens. So 31 plus 5 is 36. Let's do some of these with our actual manipulatives we just created, or base 10 blocks if you have them. Here's our first problem. We're going to look at 12 plus 5. Okay, we'll keep that right here. So I've got 12 plus 5. I know that if I use what I know about place value to help me out, this is going to be a lot easier. So I'm going to take the problem and I'm going to stack it on top of itself. So here I've got 12 and 5. I can go horizontally, that's side to side, or vertically, which is up and down. Vertically is going to help me use place value. Now I'm going to break apart these numbers using a place value mat, and I'm just going to draw it right in, like that. Here's my tens place, here's my ones place. Now, if you can already do this in your head, that's awesome, good for you, but some friends really need to use objects at first. So I'm going to start showing these numbers using my objects to represent them. 12 is made up of 1 10 and 2 leftover ones. Notice how I'm laying out my ones as if there's an invisible 10 frame here. You'll see that in a second with 5. The number 5 has 0 tens. There's an invisible 0 here holding that place. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ones. Notice how I'm pretending that there's an invisible 10 frame here. If I had 6 ones, I would go to the next row and start filling it out. That's going to help me later, friends, as I begin regrouping. Well, I know I need to add, and when we add, we put together. So I'm going to move down my place value mat, and I'm going to add my 2 ones and my 5 ones together. Some friends can do this in their head. They know it's 7. If you're not sure, you could count your objects. I've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ones, and I have 1 10 from my 12 and no tens from my 5. 1 10 plus 0 tens is 1 10. Well, look at that. 12 plus 5 must be 17. And keep in mind that 17 is the same as 1 10 plus 7 ones. Here's the next one. We're going to clear our board. If you're doing this at home, now's the time where you would clear off your manipulatives. And here's our next problem. 27 plus 2. Once again, I can add horizontally, that's side to side, but in order to take advantage of everything I know about place value, I'm going to write this vertically. That's up and down. So I'm stacking my numbers on top of each other. I know I'm adding, I'm putting together, and now I'm just going to draw in my place value chart. Oops, my place value chart. Here's my tens place, T for tens. Here's my ones place, O for ones. Now today we're not just adding these in our head. Remember, we are using objects to help us out. So I'm going to start off by showing my 2 tens from my 27 with objects. 1 10, 2 tens. But 27 doesn't just have 2 tens, it also has 7 leftover ones. So I'm going to show my 7 leftover ones, and remember, I'm going to set these up as if they're inside of an invisible 10 frame. That's going to help me later when I start regrouping. We're just getting into the habit of setting them up in a 10 frame now. Notice how I filled up the top with 5, my leftover 2 go on the bottom. 2 10s and 7 leftover 1s is helping me show 27. But what about this guy down here? I have another addend or number that I have to add. I've got 2 leftover 1s. Okay, here's my 2 1s. Now I can add or put this all together. Now friends might do this in different ways. What I showed you in the last problem was to first start at your 1s and go straight down, then look at your 10s and go straight down. I'm going to show you that right now, and then I'm going to show you how some other friends might do it. So if I've got 7 1s, I'm not sure what 7 plus 2 is in my head, so you know what? I'm going to start with 7 and count on. 7, 8, 9. I've got 9 1s. Now I'm going to jump over to my 10s place. I've got 2 10s from my 27. I don't have any 10s from my 2, so 2 10s plus 0 10s is 2 10s. 27 plus 2 is 29, which is the same as 2 10s plus 9 1s. Now here's how some friends are looking at it. They're like, Miss Burns, you're making it so complicated. There's a much easier way. Here's another way. You might just look at all of these objects and you know your 10s, these base 10 blocks represent groups of 10. You know that these cubes over here represent leftover 1s. And when we add, we put together. And you might be saying, but Miss Burns, just count up all the blocks and cubes on your board. You might be one of those friends that goes 10, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. That is also correct. That is another strategy you could use. If you choose to use that strategy, just be sure that you are able to explain what you did. When we add, we put together. So I added all the groups of 10 and all of my leftover 1s together to find that 27 plus 2 is 29. Okay, we're going to clear our board and review what we've talked about today. Here we go. Now, we said that today we're working on 2-digit addition, not 1 digit plus 1 digit, but 2 digits. And we're staying on this side of our chart today where we're adding a 2-digit number plus a 1-digit number. When we do that, we're going to take advantage of what we know about place value. We can set up our equation so that we have our numbers stacked vertically. That means up and down. That way we can very quickly add together our 1s and add together our 10s to find our sum, or the number that we get when we put everything together. If you have objects at home, you are welcome to use them. If you want to use a piece of paper and start making your own manipulatives, you can even color these if you wanted to. That's also perfectly fine. Tomorrow, what we're going to start working on, friends, is doing 2-digit numbers plus 2-digit numbers. So it's going to start getting a little bit messier. We're going to have more manipulatives or objects on our table. But if we take advantage of what we know about place value and set up our problem in an organized way, we'll be able to solve any of these problems. All right, friends, that wraps up our lesson for today. Make sure you look below the video for a link to fill out your assignment. All right, see you guys tomorrow.